Will the committee take their seats, please? I tried, it didn't come on. Good afternoon. Will the committee take their seats, please? You don't need a gavel. Thank you. We're just trying to see if we have a quorum yet so we can start. I appreciate everyone's patience. This was a surprise to all of us tonight. So, do we have a quorum yet? Thank you. So thank you, everyone, for being here, for coming over from the fourth floor. I hope you had a nice tour. I'm Senator Pam Beidel, Chairman of Executive Nominations, calling the committee to order tonight. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have some time to enjoy the beautiful city of Annapolis while you're here, and we'll look forward to hearing from all of you. My vice chair and I are excited to be here. The reason that we're here and not in the Senate is that we have no live stream in the Senate at all. And so this committee has been advertised as being live stream, and we want to be sure that the public can hear all of you and hear your beautiful resumes. So thank you. Our first order of business tonight will be to swear in the 3 judges, and council will do that for us.
Solemnly swear under the penalties of perjury that the statements you make and the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. We're going to start with Senator West, who will introduce Judge Davis and Judge Kathleen Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shall I introduce both of them simultaneously?
No.
One at a time.
One at a time, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We'll start with Judge Davis. Judge Davis has been on the District Court of Maryland for Baltimore County for 10 years. She is a graduate of the University of Baltimore, and she got her law degree from the University of Maine School of Law. That may be a first. I don't think I've ever run across someone who graduated from the University of Maine School of Law. She's been a member of a number of Maryland Judicial Council committees, and I'm pleased to introduce her.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. I am Judge Davis, District Court, Baltimore County. I want to thank you for this reappointment. I was originally appointed by Governor O'Malley in 2013, well, 2012, then confirmed in 2013, and now by Governor Moore in this year, and I'm very grateful. I am currently a part of the Specialty Courts and Dockets Committee. I chair that and also preside over the recovery court dockets, mental health court dockets, and competency dockets in the district court. Very busy. It is a privilege to serve, and if there are any questions, I can take those questions, but I want it to be brief.
Thank you, Judge. Are there any questions for Judge Davis? Okay, no questions. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
And Senator West, now Judge Kathleen Murphy.
Sure. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to introduce Judge Kathleen Murphy. She lives in my district in Sparks, Maryland. She graduated from the University of Maryland School of Law, and before that from Wake Forest University. In her third year in law school, she was the class president of her class. So maybe she has political aspirations. Who knows? Anyway, it's a pleasure to introduce her.
Thank you, Senator. Good evening, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the committee. I was extremely honored and humbled to receive Governor Hogan's appointment. I've been sitting for several months now, primarily in Towson and also in Catonsville and Essex on occasion. It would be my great honor and privilege to continue to serve the citizens of Maryland. And I thank you all for your consideration. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any committee members have any questions for Judge Murphy? Perfect. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I think I see Judge Morrissey here. Here you are. Thank you. My vision's not that great, but thank you, Judge Morrissey, for being here again tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Next, we have Senator Hedelman, and she's going to present Michael Pate. Did I say that right?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Shelley Hedelman, and I'm here to introduce my constituent, Judge Michael Pate. Judge Pate has been on the bench for 10 years. He sits in Essex in Baltimore County, and he is a graduate of a University of North Carolina undergrad and the University of Baltimore School of Law. Prior to serving on the bench, he served in the state's attorney's office, and he also was in private practice with a former Senate colleague, Senator Vernon Boozer. Many years ago, he served. When I asked him what he likes best about being on the bench, he said the individuality of cases, that the people are different and the circumstances are different. I also asked him what the biggest challenges were, and he said putting someone in prison was a challenge for him, and that he is a jurist who doesn't believe he has all of the answers, that he doesn't believe he's right about everything. He takes into account each individual's circumstances and needs and takes the power he has as a jurist very seriously, and I believe that's the kind of person we want serving on the bench. So I'd like to introduce Judge Michael Pate.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Madam Chair, members of the committee, it has been my honor and privilege to serve as a judge for 10 years now. I'm here with my wife, Tracy, tonight, and they say time moves faster as you get older, and I'm here to tell you it seems like that because I was here what seems like last summer, and it was 10 years ago when I asked for your confidence. And I take it very seriously. I take this job very seriously. I, again, ask you for your trust, and I ask that you would confirm my nomination. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Judge, I didn't say this earlier, but you can introduce your guest, so if your wife is here, if you'd like to. There she is. Thank you. Thank you. A good spouse is always supportive, so thank you. Any questions for Judge Pate? No. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Go a little bit out of order tonight. I understand that Secretary Portia Wu would like to make it to another event, so Senator Wallstreicher, would you like to come up and introduce our new Secretary of Labor, Portia Wu?
Thank you. Can you activate this microphone, please? Thank you so much, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the Executive Nominations Committee. So excited to be here to introduce and enthusiastically support the confirmation of my constituent, Portia Wu, as Maryland's next Secretary of Labor. Over the past few weeks, I've had the distinct pleasure of getting to know Ms. Wu on a more personal level. I am confident that her impressive professional background and thoughtful demeanor will breathe new life into one of our state's most vital agencies. Ms. Wu has spent most of her career developing and implementing policies that benefit our country's working people and their families. She spent nearly 15 years in federal government service, both in the legislative branch, handling labor issues for the late Senator Edward M. Kennedy, and in the executive branch, serving as special assistant for labor policy under President Barack Obama and Assistant Secretary at the Employment and Training Administration at the U.S. Department of Labor. In that last position, she was confirmed by the United States Senate on a bipartisan, unanimous basis. Ms. Wu also has a wealth of private sector experience. She started her career as an attorney representing workers and labor unions. Afterwards, she worked at the national nonprofit, the National Partnership for Women and Families, where she advocated for equal pay for women and policies that support work-family balance, including paid leave and equal treatment for pregnant workers. Most recently, Ms. Wu worked for Microsoft, where she helped negotiate a groundbreaking labor neutrality agreement between the company and the communications workers of America. As you see from the letters in front of you, Ms. Wu is supported by our diverse labor community here in Maryland. Public sector unions and private sector unions, blue-collar unions and service sector unions, teachers, nurses, welders, plumbers, police officers, firefighters, correctional officers, longshoremen, stevedores, steel workers, auto workers, all in support of this extraordinary individual. Ms. Wu holds a law degree and BA from Yale University and a master's degree in comparative literature from Cornell University. She resides in my legislative district in Chevy Chase, and her 3 children attend Montgomery County Public Schools. I respectfully ask that the members of this committee support her confirmation as our next Secretary of Labor.
Secretary Wu.
Thank you, Senator Waldstreicher, for that incredibly kind introduction. Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, members of the committee, thank you for having me here today. I'm honored to be Governor Moore's nominee for Secretary of Labor. More than 60 years ago, my father, bearing a single suitcase in his hand, came to this country on a one-way plane ticket. He came seeking opportunity, and he found it. He and my mother dedicated their careers to serving as doctors in the VA system, where they treated tens of thousands of sick and injured veterans over their lifetime. Their story reminds us that when individuals have the chance to pursue opportunity, we as a community and as a country are better for it. I can therefore think of no better place to follow my parents' example of public service than the Maryland Department of Labor, the agency whose purpose, at its heart, is to open doors and support new pathways to a better life for millions of Marylanders. That is our mission, to increase access to opportunity through job training, career and technical education, and licensing, to protect the rights of workers to a safe workplace and fair wages, to provide clear guidance to help employers who abide by the law, and to hold to account those who do not, to safeguard consumers through oversight of financial institutions and professional boards, and finally, to deliver functional and effective safety net programs that benefit both workers and businesses through unemployment insurance and soon paid family and medical leave. I'm proud to join the over 1,300 employees of the Department of Labor who are dedicated to this work, and I commit to executing our mission in a more accountable, transparent, and responsive manner. Maryland's workers, present and future, and Maryland's businesses deserve no less. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Secretary Wu. Are there any questions for Secretary? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Reedy.
Thank you, and thank you, Secretary Wu. I know we had a conversation previously when you came to see me. I really appreciated that. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about your approach to. We're still dealing with, even today, I had multiple constituents trying to help with dealing with response on unemployment. And I think the question that arises, I know we're dealing with fraudsters, which is a part of our problem, but is there a way we can work together and work with you to be sure that constituents get a pretty timely response, a relatively timely response, at least acknowledging that we know they have an issue and we're working on it, even if we can't give them the answer that they want to hear? How can we work to make that happen?
Thank you, Senator. And I will say this is one of my top priorities because I spoke with, I think, pretty much everyone on the committee, and every single person I've met with put this at the top of their list. Unemployment is a vital program for workers and families, and it has to function better than it has been. I will commit to you to making sure we are more responsive. I will say I'm still digging into the details, but you should know there is still a massive backlog at the agency of claims and issues from 2020 and 2021 that needs to be resolved. We have to attack that, and I commit to communicating with your offices. I know we can do a better job of letting you know what we're doing, and of course asking for your help and feedback in how we can perform better.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just one follow-up. I was curious about, we've come out of the COVID era, and we have a lot of state workers that are still working from home. And generally, we like to be able to promote that idea because we're working on recruitment. But there's some issue with whether we have staffing at home. Can you comment about whether that has an impact on responsiveness, not just necessarily at your agency, but with other agencies, and if there's a reason to pivot on that?
Certainly, we believe that folks who need to be in the office to provide services should be. We do have hybrid work policies, as you mentioned, in part to recruit and retain people. But surely, in today's modern era of technology, we can have and we must expect systems that are responsive to your constituents, others who need the department's assistance immediately. There's no reason, because you're sitting at one desk versus another, that you can't provide good service. And we have to hold that as our standards, making sure that good and timely service is provided. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Lane, we have the next question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question doves on Senator Reedy's question as well. We are still hearing many concerns. Our staff are, when it comes to UI, many of our staff are still having to put cases through Salesforce instead of being able to hand it over to the department like we would with other constituent concerns. I would like to hear about your approach of doing a top-down kind of look back at the UI system, the implementation. There were some issues that came up in prior audits, how you plan to approach that in the future, as well as how you plan to kind of thread the needle, because I think your predecessor had really taken an approach that the department was really trying to root out fraud. And no doubt there was fraud that occurred, but oftentimes this type of look back would block out and lead to the rescission of benefits from those who really need it. And how do you thread that needle as a secretary with your department in making sure that we get the benefits of those who really have earned it without unduly impacting them because of fraud?
Thank you, Senator. A couple responses. First of all, as a general matter, we need to do a better job of taking advantage of the resources that are there nationally to help us do a better job. All of the states had a lot of difficulties with this and the tremendous surge during pandemic, but we've had a federal Tiger team come in. We're waiting for the results of their findings. We've also had a number of audit teams take a look, so I will take those very seriously and focus on many of the recommendations there. There are so many issues that need to be addressed. The key will be to prioritize them. But absolutely to your point, I think we need to focus on timeliness and getting back to a lot of people who have been waiting very patiently for answers, or frankly have been stuck in some legal limbo while we have been pursuing claims they're not sure where they are. Like I said, I'm still trying to learn more about it, but I've noticed there is a significant backlog and many things seem to be stuck, and I commit to making it a top priority to unstick things on the employer claimant side and on the employer side as well.
And can you commit to sharing the recommendations from that Tiger team review after it's completed? And
yes, absolutely. We'll be happy
General
to.
Assembly on as well.
Be happy to.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Caruso, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Secretary Wu, thank you for our meeting earlier today. I have two quick questions. One is to follow up on my colleagues. And I mentioned to you, I specifically had a district staff representative of mine who really got into the system to learn it, and when constituents would call, would try to work through it herself before we would even refer a case to you. And that's when we came into the issues that you've got some that are fraudulent claims, but then some that are fully legitimate, but they got caught up in the system. The same with overpayments that, someone would receive a notice that they, owe $15,000 in overpayment, but it was just a temporary assumption that was fixed, but it caused a lot of panic. And when we discussed this, I specifically asked you if your team, when they do this review, would not only would talk to some of our frontline staffers, as well as some of our employers who also have some good insights and suggestions. And I just wanted to, just kind of secure that commitment from you. And then my second question is on apprenticeships. And, I know that is an area you've had leadership in the past. It's something that is definitely a shared priority, I believe, with the governor, this administration, and the legislature. And, but when we talk about these apprenticeships, the partnerships, whether it's Warwick Community College or, the different partners, whether it's the union electrical contractors or the independent contractors, how to make sure that those apprenticeships are fair for all constituencies.
Thank you, Senator, for those questions. So first of all, absolutely, I value the experience that your staff has interacting with the unemployment insurance system, and I welcome, I think all of you, unfortunately, have become probably personal experts yourselves, as have your staff. I welcome that feedback. I welcome the feedback from business stakeholders and claimant stakeholders as well, and I think a lot of you know my colleague, Andrew Fulginiti, who's here, because you've heard from him many times. We need to have that feedback to improve our system. Right? Sometimes in government, you're in danger of sort of only talking to yourselves about your systems. We can't do that. So I commit to you and I commit to all the members of this committee that I welcome that. Secondly, on apprenticeship, at the federal level, I did some work on this, and I'm excited, and I've been on private sector boards that have worked on it as well, and I see we have leaders who have talked a lot about apprenticeship in various forms. Absolutely, we need to make the system a little more user-friendly so that individuals and individual companies can participate. Smaller and medium-sized businesses can participate, diverse industries. So really looking forward to meeting the ambitious goals Maryland has set and growing apprenticeship across industries and for people at different points in their career.
Thank you, Secretary. Any other questions for Secretary Wu? Nope, I see one. Senator Hershey, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Secretary Wu. I again want to thank you for coming to my office and discussing a number of these issues. One of the things I did want to follow up on, as you may know, last year the General Assembly passed the framework for a new payroll tax that would fund the Family Medical Leave Act. And since that's an insurance program very similar to the unemployment insurance program, many thought a logical fit would be to have the Department of Labor implement that program as well, too. I just wanted to get your thoughts on being able to implement the Family Medical Leave Act versus potentially having a private sector firm implement something like that.
Senator, thank you for the question. I have to admit I haven't yet come to a conclusion on that. I know that is one of the key questions before the department and also before the legislature. I think there are pros and cons to each. We are looking very carefully at the models of states that have gone before us. I recognize also that because of a lot of the questions that have been raised about how we manage UI, that it's fair that there be questions about whether the department is up to that task, and I welcome that questioning and that scrutiny. I know there are two reports that were forthcoming on unemployment, on paid family and medical leave. We have released ours. I believe there's still one that's coming about the department's preparedness, and I look forward to seeing that and engaging in dialogue with all of you about what's best for Marylanders. I mean, that's what we want. We want a system that's best. I certainly believe that public sector employees are up to the job, and we could do a great job. I've seen it in other places, but we want to discuss with you what you think is best.
Well, thank you very much, and happy to hear you have an open mind about that. So thanks. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Secretary Wu, I think you did very well. Thank you for being here tonight. We look forward to working with you.
Thanks very much.
So I'm going to now go to the Department of Aging, Carmel Rose and Senator Lamb.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Executive Nominations Committee. It's my pleasure and honor to be able to introduce our Kamel Roque, who is a constituent of mine in District 12. She has a long background and one that's very fit and apt for this role. She's an accomplished healthcare executive with more than 30 years of experience leading and transforming nonprofit organizations, and has expertise in dementia care, palliative care, strategic planning, organizational development, and managing really difficult situations in healthcare facilities. For the last decade, she has served as the president and chief executive officer of Keswick Multi-Care Center in Baltimore. And did this throughout the pandemic as well, obviously facing tremendous challenges managing a healthcare facility and population during a pandemic. She, prior to that, had served as the chief operating officer for the Virginia United Methodist Homes, and before that had served with the Episcopal Ministries to the Aging in Eldersburg, Maryland. She has served on numerous community boards, including many that are locally in my community as well, the Village Learning Place, the Maryland Maryland American Diabetes Association and Maryland Diabetes Association, the Friends and Foundation of Howard County Library, and also the Maryland Humanities. She has been recognized by the Daily Record as one of Maryland's top 100 women, top CEO, and influential leader in healthcare. And it is my distinct honor and privilege to be able to introduce Secretary Carmel Roque. And that's French, so I learned something today, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Thank you
Unlike
so
your
much.
chair, who didn't pronounce it correctly.
It's I've been practicing for a lifetime getting the last name right. So thank you so much, Senator Lamb. And thank you, nominating committee. I had the pleasure of being able to speak with some of you earlier, and it was really wonderful getting to know some of you a little better. And for those of you who I wasn't able to track down, I know we'll do that soon. I wanted to express my deep appreciation to the Moore-Miller administration for talking me into leaving retirement to become a public servant. And I say that in jest, but also very seriously. This is a wonderful opportunity, and it fits with my passion and my purpose in life, which is serving older people and their families. And to have this opportunity now is extremely gratifying. I really look forward to leading a Department of Aging that is transparent, that shares the values of equity, inclusion, diversity, a department that can act as a convener, a collaborator, and most of all, a catalyst for important initiatives to improve the circumstances of older people and their families in Maryland. I really believe that we have an opportunity to engage all of our citizens in making Maryland one of the best places to live and to grow old. And I include the older adults themselves in that. And I look forward to that being one of the ways that we center our work in the department. I think that we can start now in making investments that will produce the highest return for the most people over their 100-year lifespans. There is a statistic out now that the 5-year-olds of today, fully half of the 5-year-olds of today, will live to be 100. That's quite stunning in its implications for us as a state. And I look forward to the Maryland Department on Aging really leading the way in helping to plan and prepare for that so that we are resilient in approaching longer lives. And it's not just longer lives, it's lives that are healthy, financially secure, socially connected, and lives of purpose and meaning. And so it is more than just growing older. It's growing older with dignity and with vibrancy. And I look forward to the department being able to lead the way on that. So I thank you for your time today, and if there are questions, I would be happy to undertake them.
I don't see any questions, but I want to thank you for your service and for coming out of retirement. I've served on the Assisted Living and Nursing Home Oversight Committee for the last 4 years, and I truly look forward to working with you and improving the lives of folks that are in our long-term care facilities. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you. Next, we have Senator Heldman, and she will bring Kevin Addix, Secretary of Ag.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am happy today to introduce Kevin Addix, who is a constituent of mine and lives in the Cockeysville area of the 11th District. He is a familiar face to many of us. He went to Loyola University, then he went to University of Colorado for a master's degree, and the University of Baltimore. What I didn't know, and I learned through going through his CV, is the enormous amount of communications experience that he has had, both academically, he's a professor at Loyola University, and that has been evident in my dealings with him, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. We met during a discussion of something that happened in my district many years ago, and it was controversial. We weren't on the same side of the issue, but Mr. Addix was very open and transparent and was wonderful to work with, even though we were on opposite sides of the issue. So he has a lot of experience in media and organizing and communication. He leads a company called Grow and Fortify. He has built organizations in Maryland's value-added agriculture space, a lot of experience in leading trade organizations around wineries, breweries, distilleries, and hemp. And he listens, he's accessible, he's responsive, and he has to balance a lot of interests, what he has done heretofore, and I think going forward. So I welcome Mr. Kevin Addix.
Thank you very much, Senator. We may have disagreed, but it was such a good working relationship that I decided to move into the district after that. So be careful what you wish for in these negotiations. Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you. This is a bit odd for me because for 20 years I have been whipping votes for other people, and here I am wearing the same suit and tie, but in the same spot, but here asking for your support to help me lead the agency that I've been representing for the last 20 years. While I'm not a farmer, I am the one that farmers have called for the last 2 decades when they were in a bind, when they had laws that needed to be changed, regulations that needed to be upgraded, or sometimes they just needed a translator to help them get from point A to point B. Today I come to you to request the ability to continue that work, but from a very different perspective. My goals as Secretary of Agriculture are first and foremost to fulfill the very high-level proposals and priorities of the Moore-Miller administration, but let me connect those for you to agriculture. First, we grow food, and if we're going to cure childhood poverty, we've got the food, we've got the farmers, we've got the technology, we just need to connect those dots. And so that's something I will work very strongly and with the administration, with other agencies, and with you to accomplish. Secondly, we provide incredible service opportunities. We provide incredible jobs and internships, many of them in the rural tier, but not all. And so they're great opportunities for high schoolers, great opportunities for high school grads, and we have a great partnership with the University of Maryland and UMES and other colleges and now community colleges to prep people to work in the agricultural industry. It does not take a 4-year degree to do that, and we've got very exciting ways that people can enter. Next, we need to ensure that the Chesapeake Bay grows stronger with each coming growing season. Our farmers are the original conservationists, we're the original environmentalists, and we need to be a bit more proactive as an industry, making sure that we're telling that story and working with regulators and others to show just how incredible we've been. We are number one, as I'm learning in the agency in my 12 or 13 days in. We're number one in terms of what we're accomplishing in the agricultural industry up and down the Atlantic seaboard regarding nutrient management and all of the concerns that have come up. We are way ahead of other states. We must preserve farms from development, and our agency's done a great job of that, but we also need to encourage farmers to engage in the programs that will make them more profitable in the end so they preserve themselves. And that's something that I've been focusing on for many years. It's not very exciting, but I'll tell you that our agency has been a little short-staffed. And so we're going to work I'll work to fill those vacancies and make sure that we've got the leanest but most productive agency that we have. You will see broad support from different segments, from the Farm Bureau, from the Tourism Coalition related to agritourism, from various agricultural groups and environmental voices as well. And if you would allow me the personal privilege of introducing my wife Andrea and son Will, if they'll stand up in the back and wave. That's the consolation prize for coming down to Annapolis. So thank you for that. And I'm so very grateful to have been asked by Governor Moore to serve this role, and I hope to make the governor proud, Lieutenant Governor proud, this body proud, and most notably the industry proud. So I look forward to your support and happy to answer any questions.
Senator Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I've had the pleasure of working, Kevin, with you on multiple occasions for different issues, and I really appreciate the way you've always gone about it. And we always agreed. So no, we didn't. Maybe not always, but I think it was excited to hear about your nomination. The question that I had for you really was, just last week we were at the Taste of Maryland Agriculture Dinner, which was a fabulous event. You know, about 800 folks from all around the state. Many of my constituents were there, and Governor Moore gave a great speech and talked about Maryland agriculture and raising it to the next level. And some of what he touched on was, we got to feed people, which I think we all agree with. Can you talk just a little bit about, I assume you buy into that vision, it sounds like you do. How can we what does it mean to take Maryland agriculture to the next level? Because I don't think a lot of people understand what a key industry it is for the state. You could argue it employs more people than any other industry in our state. So it's not just important for Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore, it's important for the whole state. Can you talk about that?
Certainly, and thank you for the question, Senator Reedy. So first and foremost, agriculture is the #1 industry in the state. We need to keep telling that story. It is the #1 industry in the state. Food does not come from the grocery store. Food comes from the ground. And so part of that is educating Marylanders to understand that. Farmers markets are a great way to interface with farms. Agritourism is a great way to interface with farms. But we need to get ag into schools. We need to just build that base so that folks are entering the industry. You know, the average age of the farmer is in the high 70s. That's coming down as new entrants get into the business. But we need to equip farmers with new tools. We need to adjust some of the regulations as to what they're allowed to do on farms, because as we've talked about for years, if you grow a tomato, that's nice. If you value add it into sauce or something that is sustainable year-round and able to be sold year-round, that increases the value. And so, those are among the easy things. Another very easy thing is connecting the dots with us growing food and there being such food insecurity in the state. Connecting those dots so that the farmers are reaching the procurers of that food for the institutions. And so that's a very easy thing. There was a bill last year to do that. We're implementing that. It's going well so far. You'll see a big announcement soon about some grants that are going to local food systems to encourage the use of local products. So a lot of things we can do, and hopefully a couple of years to be able to accomplish it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Addix, great to see you again. And again, thank you for your conversations with us prior to this. Appreciate Senator Reedy's comments and your enthusiasm, along with Governor Moore's enthusiasm over Maryland's #1 industry, agriculture. But what I have not heard yet tonight is your comments on agriculture's #1 commodity, and that's the poultry industry. And poultry industry, unfortunately, has been under attack in the General Assembly a number of different times. But it is also the largest employer within the ag industry, not just from the chickens itself, but obviously from the growing of feed. And now we're seeing some innovative ways to create waste to energy as well, too. So I'm just wondering what your plan is to work with the poultry industry to understand their needs that may be different from agriculture in general.
Thank you, Senator Hershey, and I appreciate that question because of the agricultural industries, poultry is #1.
That's right.
And when you look at the impact that poultry has, it's not just chickens on the shore. There are farmers in every single jurisdiction in the state that are growing feed for those chickens. And so if the chicken industry leaves, we now have thousands of acres without a buyer. Oh, excuse me, there is a buyer. And it's developers. Mm-hmm. And we can't let that happen. And so you have to go backwards, and quickly you'll see that the chicken industry, for whatever reason it chose, it grew and chose Maryland, grew up in Maryland. But we have to do everything we can as an industry, and my agency's doing everything that it can to promote and support that industry, all while working with the farmers to make sure that they've got the best access to the best research so that they can improve what they're growing. We're making the soils healthier so that they can grow more. But the industry is unequivocally a priority for the agency and for the administration.
Good to hear that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I don't see any other questions. Senator Hettleman, I will say you get the best people to be a witness for, so thank you, because I love working with you, Mr. Addix, and I particularly love your products. So look forward to our future.
Thanks for the endorsement.
Thank you. Next, we're going to have, I think, there he is, President Ferguson is going to present Helene Grady, Secretary of Budget and Management.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Executive Nominations Committee. It is a pleasure to be here with you in our temporary digs for the evening. Hopefully we'll have that fixed later tonight. But appreciate the work that the DLS team did to make this nomination ceremony or committee session happen today, despite the late circumstances of our streaming issues, which we assure you will get fixed with the help of the Secretary giving more money to DLS. In all seriousness, it is truly my honor and pleasure to introduce Helene Grady, who, as Acting Secretary for the Department of Budget and Management, is a phenomenal choice. For many reasons. First and foremost, her work, she comes most recently from the Johns Hopkins University, where she was the CFO and treasurer, vice president, CFO and treasurer of the entire organization for 3 years. Prior to that was the director of planning and budget for 8 years, and then started her journey at Hopkins at the School of Nursing, where she did planning and budget as well. Moved up the ranks to oversee eventually what is the $3.5 billion institution, one of the greatest institutions and healthcare leaders in the world. And her expertise led her to run the finances of that reputable institution here in Maryland. However, she also has local government experience. She served in the city of Baltimore for the finance department, also served in Philadelphia, and as well for Amtrak. Knows local government, understands the challenges of the public sector and public sector budgeting. But before I kind of point out several aspects, I do want to highlight one specific area of her work at Hopkins that I think is most impressive and I think is most indicative of the work that she will do here for the state of Maryland. And that is her work with the Be Local program and the Local Hopkins Initiative. Budgets are value statements. And with the Hopkins budget, what happened over the last 10 years was an intentional approach to say, how can we use this institution's resources to invest in our own community and help grow our own? Over the last 5 years, and there's specific data in Acting Secretary Grady's resume, the University and Health System hired more than 1,000 city residents from focus area zip codes into targeted positions and added an additional $54 million spent in targeted categories with those local businesses. It was a shift from where Hopkins had been in the past to a new approach to how to use the budget in a more strategic way, and that is the type of experience that the state of Maryland needs. Final point, maybe the greatest of all, is that she is such a great mother that one of her children is now attending the one and only Davidson College, and so clearly something has gone incredibly right. So, truly, we are very fortunate and appreciate the Moore administration doing such a great job to name someone to be such a great secretary for the Department of Budget and Management, and look forward to working with her in the upcoming administration's years ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate that. So good evening, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and distinguished members of the Maryland General Assembly's Executive Nominations Committee. My name is Helene Grady, and I am proud to be the Moore-Miller administration's nominee to serve as the Secretary of the Department of Budget and Management. It is an honor to be considered for this opportunity. I'm grateful to Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller for this opportunity, and I'm excited and hopeful about the chance to work with the new administration and my DBM colleagues in partnership with the Maryland General Assembly to serve and advance the interests of Maryland citizenry. I would like to thank the many senators and delegates who have spent time with me over recent weeks, helping me as I prepare to transition into this role, including Chairs Gazone and Barnes. Prior to my recent nomination, I worked for the past 12 years at Johns Hopkins University in a variety of roles, including the institution's chief financial officer and treasurer, as well as the vice president for planning and budget. Additionally, past professional experiences have included roles as the deputy director of finance for the city of Baltimore and the deputy budget director for the city of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Across these roles, as well as past service as an appointee to Maryland state government boards and commissions, I have gained invaluable executive financial and management experience and skills that I hope to put to good use as the next Secretary of DBM. Thank you for the committee's consideration of my nomination, and I look forward to answering any questions members might have about my qualifications and plans and intended stewardship at DBM.
Okay. Senator Croza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Grady, I want to thank you for the meeting that we had last week. And as the Senate President noted, budgets are all about priorities. And we discussed, I brought to your attention an immediate priority when we started talking about the challenges of the trauma centers in this state. Particularly, I brought to your attention that going back to 2017, so now we're into 6 years, the Tidal Health Peninsula Regional began conversations with the Health Services Cost Review Commission. And while this may sound like it's a local issue, it really is raising much bigger issues about providing the appropriate levels of funding to operate that trauma center and others within the broader context of Maryland's very unique hospital payment system. And when we talked about this, you gave me the impression that you would, as the leader of your department, working with your colleagues, with the Secretary of Health, would take a look at this because we are in a very urgent situation right now on the shore where I think some questions have to be raised about the model itself when you are making the case of why you need this additional funding for the Eastern Shore's only trauma program, which is, I want to point out, a statewide asset with the number of people that come to the shore during the season. So I wanted to ask you, I know that was, we just discussed it in our meeting. I had the impression that you were going to take that back and just wanted to be, on the record to having, taking a look at that overall HSCRC system and, and seeing if that's really best serving how our hospitals are funded, and also, in the end, it comes back to patient care.
Thank you, Senator. I do appreciate you raising this and putting it on my radar on Friday when we met. I have had some conversation with Acting Secretary Scott, and we are meeting together with the leadership from Tidal Health tomorrow morning. I do look forward to digging in, learning a bit more about how Maryland funds, in particular, trauma care in the state, and being educated by the HSCRC as well as our trauma centers across the state about where there may be opportunities for improvement.
Thank you. Next, we have Senator Lamb.
Secretary Grady, for the opportunity earlier to meet with you. In one of my roles, I serve as the Senate Chair of the Joint Audits and Evaluation Committee. And as part of that committee, we regularly review the number of audits that are repeat findings from various departments and agencies across the state. Over the last few years, we've actually seen an increase in the number of repeat audit findings. Within the Department of Budget Management, there is an audit and finance compliance unit that monitors these repeat findings. And I know and appreciate the earlier update from today that the report from the audit and finance compliance unit is going to be due out, I guess that's this month now, February of 2023. But I did want to hear about your approach to how the department can really serve and support the rest of the departments and agencies across the state in making sure that we bring those audit findings down, because I think it is particularly the repeat audit findings, because we have seen those numbers go up, and it is concerning.
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciate also you raising this issue to my radar when we met last week as well. I have begun to get a bit oriented and onboarded to our audit and financial compliance unit within DBM. My understanding is this unit was expanded in the last couple of years. We do have some vacancies, like everyone else in the room, that we are working to fill, and we're going to prioritize getting those roles filled. I also had the chance over the weekend, thanks to your questions, to get caught up a bit on the data that was shared with your committee in 2021. So I do have some understanding of the trend on repeat findings. I understand it had gotten a good bit better since 2006, but is on the worsening side a bit in the last few years. So I'm very eager to dig in with our Audit, Finance, and Compliance Unit led by Ms. Joan Peacock and my Deputy Secretary, Mark Nicole, to understand better the extent to which that unit has the capacity it needs to extend across the agencies. I've gotten oriented in just the last couple of weeks to the great work that DLS is doing and the audits that are coming out and the flurry of activity that we really need to get our arms around. Myself, together with my colleague cabinet secretaries who are coming on board, I think we're all working to get up to speed quickly to understand the financial hygiene, the audit follow-up within our agencies, and look forward to those discussions with the other secretaries with regard to how DBM can help.
All right, thank you, Secretary Grady. I know we touched on this earlier, but I think it was important to get some of this out on the public record, so appreciate that, fuller explanation as well. The last question that I have pertains to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission here in the state, and DBM actually is really the centerpiece of where all these EEO complaints go, and has liaisons throughout the various departments and agencies. In one of my other roles here in the Senate, I serve as the Senate Chair of the Joint Committee on Fair Practice and State Personnel Oversight, which every year reviews the EEO complaints that come in throughout the state as well. We've had some concerns a couple of years ago when there was a whistleblower that brought up issues from the Maryland Department of Health and how those EEO complaints were handled. And I understand that there seems to have been some remediation that went forward to address some of those issues in the receipt of those complaints. I would like to hear your perspective on how the state can best manage these EEO concerns, because on one hand, the EEO officers have a role in not only receiving it, but also to investigate and review them, but not, on the other hand, be off-putting to those who are, or antagonistic to those who are reporting those complaints.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again for putting this issue on my radar, in particular related to the whistleblower experience last year. And I have had the chance to meet with Nicole Webb. Nicole is our statewide EEO coordinator. She is a member of the DBM team. She currently reports to the Deputy Secretary. I've talked with the Deputy Secretary and Nicole about potentially changing that report up to the Secretary level. Seems to me that it's a bit buried to be below the Secretary level within DBM for the entire statewide EEO coordinator. I'm impressed with Nicole's background and experience. She is relatively new in this role for the state, having been promoted by Secretary Brinkley last year. And I look forward to working with Nicole to get a better understanding of how her and her team, her very thin team, I might add, extend themselves across our state agencies and work with their EEO reps in all of our agencies to really drive the type of culture that you're referencing and to ensure that our state workforce understand who they have to turn to and how best they can be heard when they have complaints, whether EEO related or whistleblower.
Thank you. And I'm glad to hear that Ms. Webb will be reporting directly to you with these concerns. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Riddy, before you, I just want to remind the committee, we have 27 nominees tonight. It's 5 minutes to 6. You had time with the secretaries. Most of you, they offered to meet in your offices. So can we just maybe be a little abbreviated so we can get through these hearings tonight? I'd appreciate it. Senator Reedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Grady, I thank you so much for the professionalism with which you guys have operated as we've sent in requests and budget requests. I'm sure we're not the only ones. I know all 47 senators are probably bombarding you, so we appreciate the communication and cooperation. Just very quick question: 6,100 vacancies is the number we've heard from Governor Moore. Those are all obviously PENs. Were those all fully funded last year, or were some of those 6,100 not fully funded? It's okay if you'd like to answer offline, but I was curious as we got ready for this today. I keep hearing that number, but we're all 6,100 fully funded in the budget and just not filled, or that was my assumption, but I was curious if you had an answer to that question.
That would be my assumption as well. I know the 6,100 comes from the January data that DLS reported most recently, which comes from our Workday and personnel systems. And my assumption is that 61 positions are funded in the budget and are currently vacant in the executive branch. It's a larger number across the entire state. I can certainly confirm that with my team and share back if I learn differently.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we have, I think, the last question from the Vice Chair. Senator Hayes.
Waiting for the light. It's coming. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. I guess the IT issues have extended over here to the House. Good evening, Secretary Grady. Thank you for joining us. I'll be very brief. I think the President said it well, and that budgets are a value statement, and followed up by my colleague from the Eastern Shore, and this should be no surprise because we talked about this when we met. And the issue is around diversity and DEI issues, and I wonder if you could share with us your approach and and how you would go about measuring issues around DEI and this awesome responsibility you have as our budget secretary.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair Hayes, for that question. So in my first couple weeks on the job at DBM, I have already begun to share with my leadership team at the agency my philosophy and vision toward diversity among the workforce, particularly relative to our DBM workforce, but certainly this would apply statewide as well. So the diversity of our team and our workforce at all levels of the workforce, from entry level up through executive level, is really important to me as a leader. I believe it's important to enhancing the quality of the work we deliver, and at the same time, equally important for engendering trust among our workforce and among the constituents that we serve. Trust and engagement, I believe. I'm proud of the progress that we made at Johns Hopkins University during my tenure as Chief Financial Officer for the university with regard to enhancing the diversity of the finance workforce at Hopkins, specifically within the to me as CFO at Hopkins. When I joined and when I took on the role of CFO in 2020, I had 6 leadership level direct reports, and there was no racial or ethnic diversity among the 6. When I left Hopkins a few months ago, 2 of the 6 were Black. That had a tremendous impact across the finance workforce more broadly. At Hopkins, that was palpable. Beyond the direct team to me at Hopkins, I had indirect influence over the hiring of the CFOs in all the divisions of the university during my time as CFO. We were intentional with regard to bringing in search partners who were minority-led firms and who had documented track records at recruiting diverse talent at executive level, particularly within finance. That was a first for Hopkins. We ensured that our search committees were diverse. We ensured that search committees had participated in unconscious bias training. And as a result of being intentional and ensuring that all of our candidate pools were diverse, we were able to make progress from the point of 17% underrepresented representation among our CFO roles across the university from the time I took the CFO role to more than 30% at the point when I left. So I'm very proud of the track record I have at Hopkins. I hold diversity of the workforce and the teams at the utmost priority for myself and for the folks I work with. And I look forward to digging in with regard to the DBM workforce in particular and the broader state workforce. I have had the chance to read the most recent EEO report published by Nicole Webb and Secretary Brinkley before he transitioned. I do find significant opportunity for improvement across the state, and I've asked the team for similar level data for the DBM workforce so that we can get to work. We have a lot of vacancies, and we want to be intentional with regard to our recruitment practices and ensuring that we're enhancing diversity of the team while we fill these roles.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary. I don't see any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Griffith, would you like to introduce Secretary of Commerce Kevin Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. President, and colleagues. I'm excited to be here before you this evening to introduce or to present Kevin Anderson for the position of Secretary of Commerce. Hopefully you all have had an opportunity to meet Kevin Anderson and get to see what I've known for years. Now, for those of you that haven't, I could tell you that he should be entrusted to oversee Maryland's primary economic development agency because he has an impressive resume. I could tell you that he served as Senior Vice President for Global Partnerships at an educational software company specializing in financial empowerment. I could also tell you that he helped grow this business from 32 employees to 600 employees, and during his tenure, revenue increased from $6 million to over $120 million. Or I could tell you that he was president and CEO of a community land trust where he created support for workforce housing, or that he was CFO and vice president for equity capital at a for-profit real estate and community development firm. Maybe I could tell you that he graduated from Stanford, or that he held and holds professional licenses and designations in securities trading, commodities futures, economic development financing, and so much more. Hopefully you have a copy of his resume and some letters of support on your desk that speak to just his incredible background. He's a visionary leader, and I'm proud to introduce you to my friend, a man of great character and integrity, a mentor to my sons, a man who values family and community. I'm pleased to support the nomination of District 25 resident and proud Prince Georgian, Kevin A. Anderson, for Secretary of the Department of Commerce. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Senator Griffith. As you can see, I'm very blessed to have no greater advocate than Senator Griffith, and also able to call her a friend. Good evening, Chairperson Vital, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the Executive Nominations Committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight and for graciously allowing me to meet with all of you over the last several days. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to know all of you and to hear about the work you are doing for Maryland. I look forward to hopefully having the opportunity to continue these conversations. First, I would like to thank Governor Moore for his leadership and vision for our state and for his confidence in me. I am privileged and distinctly honored by this appointment, and I truly thank Governor Moore for this opportunity to serve and help grow our state's economy and focus on investments in our businesses, citizens, and our communities. I would also like to specifically thank Prince George's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks and Maryland business owner Terry Roberts for their steadfast support and confidence in my candidacy for this position. I'm wonderfully excited about this new journey, and I'm committed to continuing to be a man of integrity and honor, to work hard every day for our state and its citizens, and to make reasoned and thoughtful decisions in everything that I do. I do understand the magnitude of this position and take it quite seriously. I want to make sure that the world knows that Maryland will be a fierce competitor for the country's businesses and its heart. I will do everything in my power to meet our goals, and I'm ready to get to work. Tonight, I have some of my family members here to support me, my brother Keith Anderson, my sisters-in-law Jacqueline and Madeline, my cousin Tony Hill, my mother-in-law, Mary Hannah, my daughter, Kendall, who snuck away from boarding school tonight to be here, and my twin sons, Kennedy and Colby, who think they're getting out of homework tonight, but they are not, and my absolutely amazing, wonderful wife, Tiffany. And although my parents are no longer with us, and if they were still here, they would be sitting in the front row smiling, trusting that I bring honor to the Anderson name. Thank you again for your time this evening, and of course, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We'll look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have, again, Senator Hellman introducing Secretary Laura Herrera Scott. I should have said Dr. Laura Herrera Scott. Thank you.
Good evening. Oh, there we go. Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Shelley Heddleman, and I'm very pleased today to introduce you to Dr. Laura Herrera Scott. Dr. Scott resides in the Towson part of the 11th District, and I have to say we're very blessed to have very, very wonderful candidates that were selected by the Moore-Miller administration. Dr. Scott has a really incredibly impressive resume. I'm not going to go through it. It really is quite comprehensive. The Department of Health has about a third of our budget that touches it somehow. This is an incredibly important appointment, and Dr. Scott really has an incredible array of experience at all different kinds of levels of health care. She is a physician, a board-certified physician. She was a major in the Medical Corps of the United States Army Reserve. She served in Operation Iraqi Freedom in Iraq, Operation Enduring Freedom stateside in 2 different parts of the country. She served in the Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C. She served in the Baltimore City Health Department. She has hands-on experience as a healthcare provider in public health, in our local public health systems. She was also served in the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene from 2011 to 2015. She was a Deputy Secretary of Public Health Services, and she understands the challenges to our public health service systems, especially, I think, can appreciate our experiences over the last few years with COVID. She has extensive experience in health insurance and managed care provider and working with provider groups. She is data-driven. She's an administrator and a manager. She has also served on national boards, including the National Academies of Science and as a commissioner on Medicaid and CHIP payment access. So she has a really diverse, comprehensive array of experience, and I am very pleased to support her to be our next health secretary. Without further ado, Dr. Scott.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, President Ferguson, and members of the committee. I want to thank Senator Heddleman for her gracious words and kind introduction. I almost started blushing, so thank you. Certainly, Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller for their nomination and their trust. Every committee member that I have met with over the past 2 weeks for their insights, thoughts, and questions. Today, I appear before you to respectfully request your favorable consideration for Secretary of Health. Senator Heddleman already went over my background, of which I have a lot, but I want to just make it clear on my priorities. As Governor Moore made clear, improving access to health care is one of the top priorities in his administration, and we must do this while leaving no one behind. And my initial focus will be on a few areas, recognizing there's many things we're going to be focusing on, but certainly in the short term, the public health emergency unwinding and ensuring access to Medicaid coverage that's maintained for thousands of Marylanders. Building on our state's behavioral health assets, we have a lot of great resources in the state, but working towards a more coordinated system of care. Certainly improving our maternal and child health services. Most recently, we were given a D+ by March of Dimes, and we can do better. And rebuilding our public health infrastructure, not only the way we operate, but ensuring that as we normalize COVID, we also start thinking about the resiliency of the communities moving forward and prepared for the next emerging infectious disease. And doing all this while working towards making access and care more equitable for all. We can't be successful without an adequate workforce, and I pledge to you that one of my top priorities as Health Secretary will be to fill our vacancies, and I will be doing this, continuing the conversations with you and your colleagues on health workforce development. I've been proud to call Maryland my home for 20 years now, and I no longer say I'm from New York, but I actually say I'm from Maryland, and I would be honored to serve Maryland again. And lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't thank my husband, Mark, and my kids, Logan and Isabel, for their incredible support. So thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I think, is that Senator Hershey's light? Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Scott, first, thank you for your service as well. As you probably see, and there's a number of questions that are coming from some of the rural legislators that are here tonight. And one of the issues that you mentioned was improving access to health care. There's a broader national issue with access to hospitals in rural areas of the country, and Maryland is dealing with that as well too, especially when it comes to the Eastern Shore. Recently, I represented the only 2 counties in the state that do not have hospitals. Since then, the hospital in Dorchester County has closed down, and that's now a freestanding medical facility. The hospital in Kent County is now the Aging and Wellness Center of Excellence. It does have observation beds, but no inpatient beds. There's been a movement with the 5 counties on the Middle Eastern Shore to get what they call a hub and spoke approach to delivering health care to those 5 counties. And the hub of that is a new hospital in Easton, Talbot County. If you're not familiar with that hospital in downtown Easton, parts of it are over 100 years old. There is a piece of property out on Route 50, and Shore Regional Health has just submitted its CON to MHCC to get approval to build a new hospital. That's been in the works for a number of years. But I am overall concerned about and would like to hear your thoughts on improving access to health care in rural areas. We know transportation is an issue, but as the governor has mentioned, we are asset rich in the state of Maryland, and especially when it comes to health care, some of the best and world-renowned healthcare facilities, as you mentioned, are right in Baltimore City. But we still struggle with access to health care in the rural areas, and I would just like to know your thoughts on that.
So I'm familiar with the hub and spoke of Easton. We've met with University of Maryland last week, and Secretary Grady and I have a follow-up meeting scheduled for later this week. So we're aware of what's happening there. I think for rural health, we just have to think about the workforce a little bit differently, and how do we create the pipeline for the workforce locally so they want to stay in their communities and serve, whether that's working with the community colleges, whether it's having a direct path from high school into those jobs for on-the-job training, it's transportation, and really understanding the population and their utilization of healthcare, and then understanding what we have in place there and whether or not those things that we have meet that population needs. I will say the global budget has certainly protected our rural hospitals. In many other states, rural hospitals are closing, and if they're not closing their doors altogether, they are closing service lines, important service lines like obstetric care in rural America. So I'll be looking at it from both ways, not only for the workforce needed, the kinds of providers that we need, certainly this initiative, the hub and spoke model in Easton, and then working with the HSCRC on how do we shore up our rural hospitals even more.
Well, thank you very much. And that was going to be my next question. I'll say you answered that very adequately. We've passed a number of pieces of legislation that help with workforce development, whether it's our residency program for primary care physicians or tuition reimbursement if you go to the rural areas as well, too. So appreciate that you continue to look at that as well, too.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Now, Senator Carozza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Dr. Scott, I really appreciate your background. We talked a little bit about with your background in the military, and I've also served at the federal level, sometimes the challenges with the bureaucracies when you try to move forward with these issues. But very quickly, your name was mentioned, being involved in the meetings with looking at the trauma funding, so wanted to, again, publicly put that out there. Also, when you talked about, we had a conversation, and we've talked about the challenges with in the rural areas, and we've talked about our workforce partners, and I just wanted to again remind you that University of Maryland Eastern Shore has the Pharmacy and Health Professions School, and we're seeing that as a pipeline for the workforce challenges. So when you talk about the partners, I know you mentioned community colleges, but I wanted you also to comment on your relationship with local health officers. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I believe in my district, I represent Somerset, Worcester, and Wycomico. We have some of the best health officers in the entire state. And want to just better understand how you view the role with them locally, because we so depend on them in our communities.
Thank you for your question, Senator. So first, on the Tidal Health, after we met last week, we got that meeting immediately scheduled, and then after you had connected with Secretary Grady, we had connected to make sure that we were all aligned and meeting together, and as she stated in her testimony, that meeting is tomorrow. We still have to understand the HSCRC part of it and the rates and how it's established for trauma, but that meeting will kick off tomorrow for us to begin the process to understand more. As far as the local health departments, in my role as Deputy Secretary, when I was here years ago, I worked very closely with the local health department. I mean, healthcare is local, and so really understanding the unique needs of every community, it's an incredibly important role. And as I mentioned to you, you were fortunately or unfortunately very rich with assets as local health department leaders, and now unfortunately those leaders are retiring, or I think have retired. Exactly. So you had a very strong bench, for lack of a better description, but they are incredibly important partners in healthcare that's delivered locally. And to the point that I mentioned about shoring up public health infrastructure, that's certainly inclusive of local health departments.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lamb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to Secretary Herrera, Scott, and appreciate the time that you took to meet with me earlier. I had a question about the boards. Your predecessor had a challenging relationship with many of our boards, and I'm not speaking just about the Board of Nursing, particularly looking across the spectrum of all of our boards. Many of them have asked for additional PINs and also for fee increases. Those have been denied in the past, and would like to hear what your approach will be to reviewing and evaluating those PIN requests as well as fee increase requests.
So PIN requests in general, I'm working with the department now to create a dashboard because some of our PINs look like they're aging in the system, but it's not for a lack of trying to fill the position. Sometimes it's the grade of the position, it's the way they're posted. So we are going to be creating a dashboard not only for the boards, but for MDH in general on really tighter management of those positions and understanding where they are and how they're moving and how we can support more active engagement for recruiting for those positions other than just posting on a website somewhere. So it's not specific to the boards, but it's all inclusive of how we go about helping to get PINs filled. As far as the fee increases, my understanding that was a decision made by the prior administration, so we'll be sitting down with the boards to understand what they need, what they want to increase the fees to, why they want to increase the fees, and then we'll be working from there. And on those, I imagine that it will be on a case-by-case basis based on the needs of the boards and the people and the clinicians that they serve.
Okay. And my last question is to do with the ASO contract, the Administrative Services Organization. I've heard that Beacon and Optum are considering rebidding for the ASO contract out of the Maryland Department of Health. Obviously, this is the Department of Health's decision, and you're going through an RFP process now. But I am curious to hear, particularly given some of the past issues with Optum, Are you and the department evaluating the decision not to pursue liquidated damages against Optum in order to help make the state whole?
So I am just getting up to speed on some of the decisions and the discussions that happened prior to me, so I don't know the answer to that right now. I would certainly be happy to report back, but I'm trying to do my due diligence on prior discussions that have happened with Optum, what is still outstanding related to the contract, and then if there's a path forward, what is that path forward? We are scheduling time with Optum in the next couple weeks to talk about the way forward, including some of the deliverables we need related to data. So I'll be looking at all of that. I can tell you, in just looking at the RFP, what we've asked for in the RFP is way more comprehensive and specific, that hopefully some of the problems that we've had with this ASO contract won't happen again.
Okay, well, thank you, and also want to echo Senator Carrozza's, your response to Senator Carrozza when it comes to the waiver. There's a good story to tell there, and I hope that you'll be a strong cheerleader and advocate for Maryland when it comes to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services and the re-upping of our waiver, unique waiver that we have with the federal government. It has helped us weather COVID in ways that many other states have not been able to, and also help support our rural healthcare facilities also in ways that other states have not been able to do. So hope that you'll continue to champion that as well.
Absolutely, and we have our first meeting scheduled with CMS the first week in March, so to initiate those conversations.
And if you can keep us briefed on the waiver process and HSCRC as well, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And Senator Reedy, you have the last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very briefly, Secretary, it's good to see you. We appreciate your answers tonight and your service. Very simply, the COVID emergency orders from the federal government coming to an end. My understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're going to start to see a pullback of COVID funds from the federal government that we get. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to mean for your budget and for the state budget? Because to me, seems a little strange that we're still in technically this emergency period. I think it should have been removed a while ago, but that does bring with it money that's removed, correct? So I don't know if you could comment on that, and thank you for your answer.
So I can't comment on all the funding, but I'll use Medicaid as an example. So there was continuous eligibility throughout the COVID period, so people didn't have to re-enroll annually. And now, because of the way the states are funded, we will have to re-enroll people again. So we want to make sure people maintain their coverage by making sure they get the notices and that they do actually have to apply again. But the funding that goes with that continuous enrollment that during COVID is going to be scaled down every single month. The match will go down from now until Christmas, until the end of the calendar year. So that's one of the areas where we're really focused on, not only because of the funding that goes with it, but more importantly, because it could mean loss of coverage for many people in the state.
No other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming next to the podium is Senator Bidel and Katie Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. So you're wondering why am I introducing Katie Savage? Because she doesn't live in my district, but she doesn't live in Maryland. So that's why, as chair of the committee, I have the honor to introduce Secretary Savage. But she has an amazing resume. She's coming to be our IT, our visionary leader in IT. And after what we've been through with cyber and the Maryland Department of Health, I think it's really going to be wonderful that we have someone with the experience that Katie brings. So Secretary Savage is most proud of helping to lead the Department of Defense's COVID-19 response including the development of a mobile tracking application used by 200,000 personnel and cybersecurity measures to ensure safe vaccine manufacturing and delivery as part of Operation Warp Speed. She's also proud of developing a digital employment verification tool on behalf of the State Department and Department of Defense to expedite visa applications for 100,000 Afghan refugees and families applying for U.S. asylum following our withdrawal. She comes to us with tremendous experience, and I think she will be a great asset to Maryland and IT. Katie?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the generous introduction. I've had the pleasure to meet with many of you on this committee. Thank you for taking the time. I really value your insights and look forward to working with you throughout my term as Secretary. I am extremely excited about the opportunity to expand on the great work that has been done at Do It. I also understand the challenge that awaits to fill gaps in our IT service delivery, lead on cybersecurity, and strengthen our relationships with our sister agencies, counties, and local governments. I plan to prioritize service innovation delivery. I want Do It to be a partner to the other agencies and to you in defining and implementing creative, sustainable solutions, particularly solutions that improve constituent services. I am extremely honored to be nominated, and I'd like to thank Governor Moore and his team for the opportunity to serve. I want to recognize and thank my husband, who is here tonight, for his partnership in all our endeavors. And as you might be able to tell, we are about to bring another woman in science and technology into the world. We're excited to tell our daughter. Her STEM career began when I was 9 months pregnant. I hope to similarly champion women and underrepresented communities that do it throughout my tenure. Thank you again for the time and the nomination, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions? We're going to ask Senator Beidel to stay there at the podium, and we're going to go out of order a tad bit and bring up Secretary of State Susan Lee.
So thank you again, Mr. Vice Chair. I think we all know our colleague Susan Lee. Where is she? Where is she? Oh, no. Senator Feldman, do you want to come up and do this? You can. I was just here because Senator Lee doesn't have a senator right now. So.
You threw me off there, Chair Bottle. I thought I had been demoted, but...
Questions from our chair.
Mr. Vice Chair, it's a great, great honor to present Susan Lee, somebody this committee knows very well, for consideration to be confirmed as Maryland's 72nd Secretary of State. Obviously, you all know her. I've known Susan Lee, our Secretary of State designee, for over 20 years. The district that she represented, the 16th district, is right next to mine. I served with her both in the House and in the Senate, 4 years as her seatmate in the State Senate chamber. I was the Montgomery County House Delegation Chair for 5 years, and Senator Lee was my Vice Chair for that entire 5-year period. We even traveled overseas together. So I want to say, putting that together, I'm uniquely positioned to weigh in on this nomination. So just indulge me a little bit here. My Senate District 15, where the nominee grew up and went to high school, the same high school as my children, Winston Churchill High School, has the largest Asian population of any district in the state of Maryland. And a lot has been written this year about diversity, breaking glass ceilings. And when I think of Susan Lee, I think of someone who over 20 years ago, before she was even elected, started the process of breaking down barriers for the Asian community. She frankly became the face of a movement in Montgomery County and the state to get the Asian community more involved in state and local politics. She helped found an organization, the Coalition of Asian Pacific and American Democrats of Maryland, back in 1998. The very first organization I was told I needed to appear in front of when I ran for the legislature. She quickly became a major political force in Montgomery County. In 2002, she was appointed to fill the spot in the House of Delegates vacated by Nancy Kopp, who was to become our state treasurer. And then she got elected in her own right later that year, becoming the very first Asian American woman ever elected to the Maryland State Legislature. And then the first Asian American ever elected to our state Senate when she was elected to the Senate in 2014. Thus, to my right, a historic figure in Maryland politics. And in the process of doing so, she broke down that glass ceiling. She laid the foundation for others to follow in her footsteps. My own district being Exhibit A. Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller followed after Susan, elected the House of Delegates in my district. Lily Chi, the first Chinese-born state legislator, elected in 2018. And as a legislator, she was a dedicated and tireless public servant for over 2 decades. No one, and I mean no one, better at constituent service, a big part of being an effective Secretary of State, I might add, attending every local community event in her district, getting several hundreds of people to community events on short notice. She was everywhere, she is everywhere, comfortable in those events, which will be an asset to our state, representing Maryland with foreign delegations as part of the sister state program and other events within her purview. On the legislative front, she co-chaired a commission dealing with cybersecurity, has championed legislation related to privacy issues, consumer protection, pay equity, gun safety, and laws to fight domestic violence, human and labor trafficking, and has received numerous awards for her work. Putting all this together, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Susan Lee has broken down barriers, had a stellar legislative career, has earned the trust and respect of her colleagues and the people she represented in District 16. She will no doubt make an excellent Secretary of State, is why you see letters of support from everyone, including former Senator, now Congressman Jamie Raskin, and a slew of others. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I present to you Secretary of State designee Susan Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, Chairman Beidel, Vice Chair Hayes, and President Ferguson, thank you so much for letting me appear before this esteemed body. And I'd like to thank my former colleague, Senator Brian Feldman, and who is now Chairman Feldman, for his generous and very overly generous remarks. Thank you. We've been in this journey together for over 20 years. We both served in the House of Delegates and the Senate. So it's a real honor and privilege to be introduced by him. We're also dear friends, and yes, we went on a legislative mission together to Turkey, and it was just fabulous. And it's been the greatest honor of mine to be able to serve with all of you in the Maryland State Senate. It's a real privilege. You are the best and brightest, and those years are truly the most gratifying I've ever had in my life. Because together we work very hard to pass the good laws, to uplift countless people, and to benefit Marylanders in so many different ways. So I am so grateful for the time that you work with me. We weren't always in agreement, but the things that we were in agreement, we passed together, and we worked together. And I've been so happy and blessed in life to be able to work with you. I also want to thank Governor Wes Moore for appointing me to this position of Secretary of State and giving me the chance, the opportunity of a lifetime to be able to serve Marylanders in this way, to uplift them, to make sure no one gets left behind. This is a wonderful opportunity, and I will tell you, I will work my hardest to be able to fulfill the important missions and the ministerial functions of the Secretary of State, which there are so many, but also to be Maryland's ambassador, not just to the world, but to other states, and to be an exemplar, and to make our state open for business, but also particularly to elevate the sister state program so that we can encourage greater international investment, partnerships, trade that will help bring business to Maryland, but also sell our goods and services overseas. We also have, I'm honored to be able to, in this capacity, be the chair of the international, the subcabinet on international affairs, because we bring several agencies into coordination to work together so that we can help them promote their goods and services overseas too. And this is an important body, which I will work hard on to ensure that we work in partnership with the other state agencies and with you too. And I'd like to say that this is also an opportunity to increase international exchange and trade and investment in things like life sciences, bioscience, cybersecurity, IT, and emerging technologies. These are industries that require international exchange to create life-saving medical treatments and quality of life innovations, but also to create a new type of knowledge-based jobs here, and also to generate huge billions of dollars in revenues for our state of Maryland. So I hope that I'll be able to do this and also make Maryland the epicenter of those fields here, and also to brand our state as a state that is at epicenter and that is welcoming and is open for business. So I'll bill over my over 20 years of legislative experience to be able to contribute more to the mission and work of the Secretary of State's office. And I want to work as partners with you because we're all stakeholders. And I think together we can deliver a lot to our citizens of Maryland. And so I respectfully ask your support for my nomination as Secretary of State. And I'm glad to answer any questions. Thank you.
Senator Hershey.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I would like to just second Senator Feldman's recommendation of our former colleague, Senator Susan Lee, for Secretary of State. I know that we're all confident that she'll do an outstanding job in that role.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for our colleague? Congratulations, Madam Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So our last secretary nominee for tonight will be brought up by Senator Dawn Guile, and it's Secretary Josh Kurtz. And Secretary Kurtz, I have to tell you, you win the award tonight for the most letters of support. You have probably at least 10 letters in this packet, so that speaks highly. Thank you. Senator Guile.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Executive Nominations Committee. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce my constituent, Secretary Joshua Kurtz, to be considered for Secretary of Natural Resources. Secretary Kurtz's qualifications for this role are exemplary. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Conservation from the University of Delaware, as well as a Master of Public Policy from George Mason University. His relevant career experience includes serving as a policy and program associate, government relations manager, director of policy development, and ultimately policy and government relations director for the Nature Conservancy. In that capacity, he researched and developed data-led conservation policies, including the creation of regulatory concepts to build climate-resilient communities here in Maryland. He was also responsible for identifying policy solutions for clean water initiatives in our state and beyond. In addition, Mr. Kurtz created the Nature Conservancy's Youth Advocacy Training Program to develop the next generation of conservation leaders. After honing his extensive policy background at the Nature Conservancy, Mr. Kurtz sought to broaden his experience in managing teams and was given the opportunity to serve for the last 2 years as Executive Director of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. There, he developed and managed the budget for the organization, served as the primary relationship manager for the various stakeholders and partners, and created a 5-year strategic plan. I have no doubt that as Secretary of Natural Resources, Secretary Kurtz will consider all stakeholders when leading the department and will chart a pragmatic and equitable strategy toward overseeing our state's resources. I believe he's also committed to a healthy environment and a healthy economy for our state, while being mindful of data reliance and cost effectiveness in his approach. On a personal note, I'm also delighted to welcome his wife, Sam, who's here with us today, and who is well known here in Annapolis as a longtime advocate for public education. In sum, colleagues, I'm so very proud and thrilled to endorse the governor's nomination of Mr. Kurtz as Secretary of Natural Resources. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Secretary Josh Kurtz.
Thank you very much, Senator Guile. Good evening, everyone. Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. It's an absolute honor to sit here today and receive this nomination from the governor. I could not be more inspired to serve in this administration. The focus on climate change, expanding our green economy is critical. Delivering clean water to every creek and stream and eventually to the Chesapeake Bay is important, not only for the environment, but for our economy and for our human health and enjoyment of where we are. I want to thank each of the members of this committee that took the time to meet with me and found some questions, some ideas around. I really appreciated it. And there was one, I think, common theme that I wanted to bring up that I think I discussed with pretty much everyone here, and that is the importance of balance. When you look at the Department of Natural Resources, to successfully manage these resources, we need to take into consideration the ecological and environmental, the social, and the economic opportunities that these resources provide. And in order to do that, it's critical to hear every stakeholder, to have an open door, to listen, to be reliant on data, and also to make sure that we're bringing the best data forward. We've got some incredible universities here and non-governmental partners, local governments that are doing some phenomenal things, and making sure that we're bringing that into any decision making and making sure those decisions are transparent for all of our stakeholders. This is pretty cool. I got to be honest with you. As somebody who spends a lot of time outside, this is the dream job, working on natural resource management here, especially at a time we've got so many emerging threats like climate change, the impacts that that's having to our waterways, to our communities, invasive species, not talked about all that oftenly, but it's wreaking havoc in our terrestrial and our aquatic habitats, and something that we can take bold action on in this administration. I firmly believe that we've got the talent in the department and across the state and the partnerships to be able to be successful in managing our resources. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz. Do I have any questions? Senator Croza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Secretary Kurtz, thank you for taking the time. We did spend some time on these issues, and I'm just going to follow up. And our watermen, our commercial watermen, have been left behind. And I think we're at a point, when I think about what happened 4 years ago when we could have worked through some issues, and now we fast forward, and you come forward with an approach on balance, a governor that is saying, leave no one behind. And when you talk about that balance, you mentioned the universities and the data, but we also talked about the actual experiences of the watermen who can come back and let us know, whether, these sanctuaries are working, whatever it might be. And we focused in our conversation about clean water, access to shell, and adaptive management practices, which gets into a really hard look at rotational harvesting, really looking at the sanctuaries of what's working, what's not working. So, when we talk about the impact and the role of with our watermen, I just wanted to hear you expound that when you're looking at shell, that we're basing that on the science, and that we are actually taking the experiences of those watermen, their recommendations, and really taking a hard look at it, and not just focusing on the academic side.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Thank you for that question, Senator Carrozza. When we look at the science that comes out, there's kind of different scales, right? There's some of the larger scale monitoring, looking at bay-wide water quality health. We have monitoring stations at the department to help us kind of zero in. But then there's also the lived day-to-day experience that we're seeing, right? The watermen are understanding the changes that are happening kind of minute by minute. And that's really important for us to take into consideration when we're making management decisions. I think, you touched on something really important here, and it's the lack of shell, right? We need to think about this in kind of two times. term and short term. We need to start really incentivizing making sure we're keeping as much shell as we can in Maryland so that it can be replanted. We need to be looking at ways that we can tap into existing shell sources that maybe are silted over or not working properly for what we want them to do, which might be, the industry, for aquaculture, for the sanctuaries. There's a lot of demand for shell, and I think we also need to make sure that we're following up with other innovations, right? And finding places, maybe that's alternative substrate where appropriate, to make sure that we have access to the shell and the things that we need to continue to grow and the abundance of our oysters for the public fishery, for the water quality, and for aquaculture. Yes.
Thank you. And one more question, Senator Hershey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Secretary Kurtz, once again, thank you for coming and meeting with us a number of different times. And I'm sure that we could talk about a number of different issues that would bore this room to death, but they still were very important to us, and I do want to make sure that we can talk about a few of them. Obviously, as a representative from the Middle Eastern Shore, Upper Eastern Shore, a commercial waterman industry is very important to us, as agriculture is, that we talked about earlier as well. But when we talk about oysters, there has been a number of issues that have come about from the General Assembly that was not just about the environmental aspects, but also it seemed to be about placing blame on why the oyster population was low. And the blame seemed to always go to overharvesting. It never went back to disease that we saw before. It never went back to the invasion of the blue catfish that are eating the baby oysters now. It doesn't go too often to the Conowingo Dam and the issues that we have with sediment. It just seems to be focused on those that earn their living out on the bay. And while the chairwoman mentioned how many letters she got, I probably got an equal amount of phone calls over the weekend too. And obviously the commercial watermen are very concerned about your previous ties to Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And your thoughts, I guess your policies, or the policies driven by the CBF. I think what they really need to hear, and what I'm asking you, is for your assurances, again, that you will take into consideration all stakeholders. And I had a number of questions, but I'm going to end it on the one that I got on my last phone call on the way over here. It's a waterman that I know very well, lives up the river from me. And he said, Senator, he goes, our livelihood is in your hands tonight. He says, we are very concerned. We're very scared that the policies of CBF will end up as the policies of DNR. And he says, it's our jobs we're concerned about. It's our livelihood we're concerned about. It's our investments we're concerned about, our heritage, our way of life. He says, ask the secretary that he's going to include us. Ask him to make sure that you will consider them in your decision-making at DNR.
Yeah, I will commit to absolutely working with the commercial watermen. I think I'm not coming here to advance policies from other organizations. I'm coming here to work with an incredible team to really think about the balance, right? That is the charge, that is the statute, that is what the Department of Natural Resources does, and I take that very seriously. And I think what you will see, and hopefully I think some of those constituents are seeing, is that I am taking the time and meeting with them directly. I want to kind of get back to this issue around of causation, right? And blame, because I do think that's important. We're in a place where you can feel that friction, right? I mean, I think you're touching on it right now. Right. We are at a place, especially with the oyster population, where following years of stability, right, where harvest was stable, disease came in, it fell off the table. And we got to a spot which was, really critically low for our oyster populations. And what we're working to do now is bring them back, get them up off the mat. And I think the goal is really to get back up to that point of relative stability. You touched on blue catfish. Huge issue for the oysters as well. I mean, stripers, blue crabs, many of our commercial fisheries are impacted by that already, and something we need to take action on quickly. Also, climate change. those fresh events in 18, 19 really negatively impacted our populations as well. So I think it's not about placing blame, but it's about making sure that we understand the root causes and that we're tackling them and that we're buffering for them in the future, especially when we think about those big fresh events from climate change.
Well, thank you for all your comments, Secretary, and I do look forward to working with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Reedy, I think last question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very specific question, and I'll skip the pleasantries, but it was great to talk with you briefly, and I know we'll have other chances to have conversations. Solar energy, solar on agricultural land. It's a big concern in my community, in my county. Should counties have the ability to either designate or should counties have the ability to designate or eliminate areas for solar use? I know there's a county nearby, my county, that has a big agricultural preserve, and they don't allow solar on it. But there's a concern in county governments like mine that, you know, what's going to happen? Are we going to be in trouble if we don't allocate enough open space and open land for solar? So I don't know if you could comment on the view of ag land being used for solar, because it is a big concern.
Yeah, and I think thank you for the question. I think the power plant research program at DNR is looking at all of the potential impacts in areas where solar development has and could happen. I think when we think about ag lands, you know, that we lease, right, the Department of Natural Resources leases ag lands, understanding the importance of those as staying kind of natural filters, working with healthy soils and working with those lessors to make sure that they remain agricultural land. But I think that's the areas I'm most familiar with at DNR around solar, but I can get back to you about some of those more specifics around the kind of the regulation of the industry.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we just want to be sure there's a place I know for solar fields, but we really want to try to be sure ag land is not sort of shoehorned into it. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If there are no other questions, thank you very much. So that ends our hearings on our secretaries, and we're going to begin our other appointments for tonight. So Senator Watson, are you here? Do you see him? We have Affordable Housing Trust Board. I'm not going to be able to pronounce this name. Roseanne Nebumondo. Page 52. Yeah, let's give him a minute. Do we have anybody here? She's not here at all? Let me try one more time in case they're in the hallway. Affordable Housing Trust Board of Trustees, Roseanne Nebumondo. Okay. We are going to go on to the Airport Zoning Board of Appeals, Mr. Wayne Dixon. I know he's here. I saw Mr. Dixon come in. There he is. There he is. Okay. So if you don't mind, I'm going to introduce Mr. Dixon from my seat just so we can keep moving along. So Mr. Dixon lives in District 32. I'm proud to introduce him. I've known Mr. Dixon for about 20 years. He has chaired our local Harmon Civic Association. He has been born and raised in Anne Arundel County. We have a park named after his dad, Mr. Tom Dixon, for his work at the airport in the early years. So Mr. Dixon is well aware of the airport, the issues, the zoning issues, and this is a reappointment for Mr. Dixon to the Airport Zoning Appeals. And Mr. Dixon, thank you for all your work, and I look forward to having you serve another 4 years. So thank you for being here tonight. Sorry for the long wait.
No problem. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, Deputy Chair, the esteemed members of this committee, and all of the esteemed people in this room who were here prior to my arrival and who are here now. The wonderful thing is that everyone in this room is interested in maintaining the quality of life or improving the quality of life in our state. And I am honored and humbled to be in all of your presence. I've served on the Board of Zoning Appeals since 2014, I was put on there by the previous Senator DeGrange. And I was filling in someone who resigned from the board, filling out their remaining 2 years. My relation to the airport. The Harlem Civic Association was established back in 1967, March 3rd. And one of the primary things it was established to do, because the communities near the airport, was to deal with, back then, it was called the regional airport, which was still under the ownership of the city of Baltimore, called Friendship Regional. In the 70s, it was purchased by the state of Maryland, which was a wise move. And then the rest is history as to how the airport has gone through various transitions and growth and so forth. As some of you may be aware, the state of Maryland is in a very unique position when it comes to airports on the globe. Most airports are owned by private entities. As such, the fluctuations we have in economies affect the operation of said airports. And being owned by private industries, like some of the airports in Europe, with the economy downturns, they went into some difficult situations, and some actually went out of operation for a moment or two. Maryland being unique, where the state owns the major airports in the state, and given the being backed up by the entity of the state and its various financial resources, helps to even out that curve, so you don't have the kind of up and down effects that affected the various airports around the globe that are privately held. So that was a wise move by the state, and it would continue to be a wise move for the state to continue to own the airports here. You may know some of my family members who are no longer with us, but Richard Dixon, who was in the House of Delegates for a long time and represented Carroll County and became the first black state treasurer. Not only was he the first black treasurer of the state of Maryland, but the first qualified state treasurer of the state of Maryland. He had a master's degree in high finance, and he was the first black vice chairman in Merrill Lynch, which is headquartered in Baltimore, which a position he had to give up once he became state treasurer. And my father before me, Richard Thomas A. Dixon Jr., Mr. Matheson, the previous in charge of the MAA of Maryland, and my father had a great camaraderie to the point where there's as Madam Chair mentioned, on Dorsey Road, named after my father, the Tom Dixon Observation Area. One thing I would like to ask the indulgence of the senators is there was something that used to be called the Neighbors Committee that existed prior to the Next Generation Committee that got created over the past few years. The Neighbors Committee was really an integral part of managing the growth and the livability around BWI Airport for the surrounding communities, such as mine and others. It would be fantastic if that committee could come back. So something to ponder, and please ponder that. And I relinquish any questions.
Mr. Dixon, thank you. You'll be happy to know that we are asking to appoint members of the community to the Maryland Aviation Administration, which may solve your problem or your question that you have tonight. So we're working on legislation right now. Are there any other questions for Mr. Dixon? Thank you, sir, for your service. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for your indulgence, everyone.
Next, we have the Automobile Insurance Fund Board of Trustees, Mr. Christopher Marion and Senator Gazzone.
If you don't mind, Madam Chair, I'll take your lead and we'll stay at our chairs maybe as we move things along quickly. I just had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Marion this afternoon. He is a experienced real estate insurance professional for 20 years. He is currently the vice president and branch manager at Erie. And when I heard that, I was curious about what a branch manager is, but for him, it's actually he oversees the entire Maryland and D.C. area. Significant responsibility. He's been on the as a trustee since July, and from everything I'm hearing from the leadership of the trust, he is doing a tremendous job. I would like to recommend Mr. Marion for this appointment.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and committee. Yes, as Senator Gazone mentioned, I have 20 years in the industry. I'm excited for the opportunity to be appointed to the position of in the insurance position in the Maryland automobile insurance. I have not only 20 years of experience in the industry working with Erie Insurance as Vice President and Branch Manager, I also hold my insurance license and have earned my CIC designation, which is Certified Insurance Counselor. I think this perspective brings a lot of opinion to the board, and I look forward to sharing my perspective with everybody. Thank you for your consideration. Welcome any questions.
I don't see any questions. You do come highly recommended, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have is Senator Bailey with us. Senator Bailey is going to introduce Mary Allen, College of Southern Maryland Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to address this committee and its distinguished members. Senator Bailey, for the record. Tonight, I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Kathy Allen. Many of you might have worked with her in the past. She's been elected to the Board of Education in St. Mary's County for the past 22 years. She served on the May Board of Directors for 12 years. For the past 6 years, she's been on the Council for Advancement of School-Based Health Centers. She's also a pediatric and intensive care unit registered nurse. This is a very professional lady who's familiar with K through 12 education, and I believe she can bridge the gap between high school and college to the Board of Trustees for the College of Southern Maryland. I ask for a favorable report for her nomination.
Aware of the lateness of the hour, I will simply say, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, distinguished senators, I'm very grateful for Senator Bailey's support, and I certainly ask for your favorable appointment to allow me to continue to serve on this magnificent board, the Board of Trustees for the College of Southern Maryland. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't see any questions, but we thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you. Senator Bailey, if you'll stay. I think you have Cordelia Postel, member of the Board of Trustees, another member of the Board of Trustees.
I think that's Senator Ellis.
Okay, well, somebody had written. So, Senator Ellis, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Hayes, and members of the esteemed Executive Nominating Committee. I'm here to reintroduce Mrs. Cordelia Postel for reappointment to the Board of Trustees to the College of Southern Maryland. Also like to thank Governor Moore for agreeing to her reappointment. Mrs. Postel, Army veteran, experienced educator, principal throughout the school system, educator, very qualified to continue her great work on the board, and therefore I encourage her reappointment. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much, Senator Ellis, for such a kind evening, Chair Vital, as well as Vice Chair Hayes and members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. I'm very happy and have a great honor in having the privilege to continue to serve the citizens of Southern Maryland, and especially the College of Southern Maryland. I'm equally honored and grateful for Governor Moore's reappointment and consideration of me being a part of the Board of Trustees, as well to the board, the committee. Senator Ellis, thank you so much for this opportunity and for the continuance and charge of stewardship over the continuance of education and the pursuit thereof. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Postel. Any other questions for tonight? No. Thank you for your service to the college. Thank you. And next we have, for the State Board of Elections, Mr. Summers, and it's our first appearance from our new Senator, Alonzo Washington.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Alonzo Washington, who I'm here on behalf of Mr. Summers, my constituent who has been nominated for the Maryland State Board of Elections. Mr. Summers might look familiar to some of us here. He served in the Maryland House of Delegates from 2010 to 2014, and we worked together on the House Ways and Means Committee and on the Election Law Subcommittee. From 2013 to 2014. In addition, he was a member of the Commission to Study Campaign Finance Law and served for over a decade in the office of Prince George's County's State's Attorney's Office. It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Summers, and a point of personal privilege. Mr. Summers and I share a mentee together who has been very successful in Prince George's County. I grew up in poverty, grew up in certain circumstances, and now graduated from college and has a master's, and now as a father of two and in the military. And so I'm so grateful to have this gentleman be nominated to the Board of Elections. Mr. Summers.
Thank you.
Thank you so very, very much, Senator Washington. Congratulations on your new endeavor as well as your family.
Thank you.
And thank you for that recognition. Thank you, Honorable Chair Beidle, Vice Chair Haynes, President Ferguson, and the members of this august committee. I humbly seek your favorable confirmation for my appointment to the State Board of Elections per the nomination from our most esteemed governor. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. And we do have a question. Senator Augustine?
No, it's not a question. It's just a welcome. Delegate Summers, thank you for representing me for 4 years in the House of Delegates, and it's really good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thank you, Senator.
Me too. Thank you for continuing your service to the state of Maryland, Delegate Summers. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
So next, I think I should have Senator Watson here for the Healthcare Commission of Maryland. And if I don't get your name properly, I apologize.
It's okay.
Owa Ochikutu?
Owawu Ojikutu,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. I don't have a letter from your senator, and I apologize, but we'd like to hear from you. Thank you.
My name is Owawu Ojikutu. I am currently a nurse practitioner and a candidate for doctorate of nursing practice at the University of Maryland for a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner degree. And I am honored to be reappointed with Healthcare Commissioner and looking forward to serving the Maryland constituents.
Thank you. You bring a lot of important issues to the Healthcare Commission, and I appreciate it, both nurse practitioner and the behavioral health issues, and I'm sure you're a real asset to that commission, so thank you for agreeing to be reappointed. Are there any other questions from anyone? We'll look forward to working with you. Thank you. Oh, Senator McKay, if you'll introduce Leonard Webb, Juvenile Services Education Board.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and the rest of the body. Good to see you. Trying to be brief. I know we've got a lot to do. It gives me pleasure to introduce Mr. Leonard Webb, who hails from Mount Savage, Allegheny County. Great place. But that on itself, he has been recommended to be appointed to the Juvenile Service Educational Board, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Webb. Sir?
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my wife and stepdaughter for enduring the day here, coming from Allegheny County, Laura and Alyssa, and also my son who's not able to be here. He's in college preparing for the baseball season at Davis and Elkins and also studying, and my daughter Shay, who is in Florida, taking care of my grandson Makeo. So with that, I'm humbled for the opportunity to serve our youth in Maryland. I'm just a kid from New York trying to make a difference in the lives of the youth in the state of Maryland. Just really quick, my father is a white man who was born in 1921. He served in World War II. My mother is a black woman who grew up in Selma, Alabama. She was born in 1941. They met in New York City. I won't get into the story. It's been romanticized to me, but I won't get into that. I'm hoping I avoided the obstacles that a lot of my peers fell into with drugs, crime, and incarceration. And I'm hoping this appointment will allow me to, with my experience, I spent 27 years with the Federal Bureau of Prisons helping men not return to prison. And there's a quote by Desmond Tutu that says, sometimes we have to stop pulling people out of the river and figuring out why they're falling in. And after 27 years, I decided to put all my efforts into education and keeping the youth of Maryland from falling in the river. So I'll answer any questions. I wanted to be brief.
Senator President Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. And very briefly, former Senator Dolores Kelly, this was her passion, was this board, and her other passion was executive nominations, and her belief was that people had to show up and be here. And so I just want to thank you, traveling all the way from Allegheny County. It shows how much you care about this important board, this new board. It's so critical for the state of Maryland, and just really appreciate your service, and thank you and your family.
Thank you.
Any other? Senator Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to let you know my seatmate and I are very interested in reading your story, so we hope you'll write a book and so we can hear the rest of that story. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I actually have my book with me if you want one.
I love that. All right. Yeah, I'll share it. I'll share it. Thank you.
And Mr. Webb, I apologize for having you wait so late. Typically, we'll take the people from far away early, but we had the secretaries tonight, so unfortunate for you that it's 7:11 and you're just going to be driving back to Allegheny County. But thank you for your service, and we'll look forward to hearing more about you after you serve some time on the board.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Senator Smith, Chair Smith, with Sarah O'Haron, Maryland Agricultural and Resource-Based Industry Development Corporation, MARBIDCO, Board of Directors.
I'll be quick. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. President, members of the committee. It's my honor to introduce Sarah O'Haron. I'll provide better constituent services next time and get you bumped up a little bit earlier, but thanks for hanging in here. She's the founder of Black Ankle Vineyards, which has over 80,000 grapevines in 12 different varieties. It's in Frederick, but she's from Silver Spring. And they have 150 acres up there, expanding to 2 new locations, so over 550 acres in the making for new Maryland wine here. So really proud of that. Before that, she was vice president of Kaiser Associates, where she advised Fortune 500 companies like Chevron, Lockheed Martin, Lucent Technologies, and Welch's. It's actually a reappointment for her.
Yes.
So she's coming back. She had a kind of a 4-year stint in between, so early 2000s, and then a break, and then now she's back to provide her expertise and service. Graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and a resident of Silver Spring. So it's my honor to recommend her for a reappointment. And with that, I'll give her the floor.
Thank you very much, Senator.
I just want to know when we can have a field trip.
Come on out.
I've been to Black Ankle, and it's wonderful, and you have great wine, so
thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening, and I have served on the MARBIDCO board for a number of years. It's been my honor to do that, and I appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve. We've talked a lot about the importance of agriculture and natural resources to the state, and MARBIDCO is one of the organizations that is really working to kind of support that. So I feel like I'd be able to be a part of it.
Have any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm joined to the podium by Reverend Dr. Harold Carter, I know we're moving quick, and I would love to move just as quick as anyone else, but I am blessed and honored to even be in the presence of the Reverend Dr. Harold Carter, who's a third-generation preacher ordained at the church in which he now pastors since 1996, the New Shiloh Baptist Church. Reverend Dr. Carter is known as a preacher of preachers. Many throughout the faith ministry come to him for counsel, advice. After the uprising that took place in Baltimore
it was in his sanctuary where he gathered many from the community, political leaders, ministers, and alike, and, led them down North Avenue, locking arm in arm, which brought a calm to the unrest in the city of Baltimore. He's a leader among many. Him and his son host the #1 gospel radio show every Sunday. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce and ask for a favorable nomination of the Reverend Dr. Harold Carter on the Board of Regents at Morgan State University.
Thank you so much, Senator Hayes, and appreciate those gracious words, and Madam Chair, and again to the Vice Chair and to President Ferguson. Again, I'm Pastor Carter, and it's been my good privilege to have served already about a half a dozen years as a regent at one of our great HBCUs, Morgan State University. And I'm looking forward, God willing, to continue serving in that role. Of course, it was under Governor Hogan that I began, and now this renewed appointment under this new administration of Governor Moore. And presently, I'm serving as a part of the Finance Committee as a regent, as well as I also am a part of the President's Evaluation Committee as well. I seek again your support and express my appreciation even now going forward. Looking forward to continuing to serve. I am pleased to have my son who's with me. I have two boys, two sons, but this is Reverend Daniel Carter, who is also on staff with me at the church that I serve as my assistant at the New Shiloh Church in Baltimore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your service to Morgan. Any other questions from? Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator.
Senator Reedy, you are next with Mr. Robert Lillis.
Chair, and I will follow the example of my colleagues and stay here and introduce another one of our long-suffering constituents that's waited tonight. Robert Lillis is nominated for the State Racing Commission, and I cannot think of a better person to be serving in this role. He's from north of Westminster, and Mr. Lillis is just a real fixture in our community. He's been very involved on a number of levels, but I think it's fascinating. He started working at a racetrack in 1969 in Detroit, Michigan, and has been involved with the racing industry really ever since, from being a jockey to an exercise rider. He's got experience in thoroughbred breeding and training. He understands the harness industry as well as the thoroughbred industry, has a great background and expertise, and has been a champion for really decades at preserving and protecting the racing industry in Maryland, which is currently responsible for about 28,000 jobs in the state and helps to preserve hundreds of thousands of acres of land in our state as well. So he's just an outstanding qualified person, and without further ado, I'd ask you to, I'll turn it over to him and just ask you for you to support it. He has my full support.
Thank you, Senator Reddy, and Senator Bidel, Senator Hayes, and Senator President Ferguson. I want to thank the Moore Miller administration for this nomination. For me, it's absolute lifetime achievement. Horse racing is more than just 10 horses going around in a circle and may the best horse win. It is a huge agribusiness, and it supports 101,000 horses in the state of Maryland, 705,000 of green space, and 16,000 horse farms. It is very important for Maryland horse racing to survive, both the thoroughbred and the harness. It's all about the jobs, and a lot of the jobs are all that these people know, and without horse racing, you're going to have a lot of situations. My goal is to help horse racing survive and look for a better future. And I'm willing to answer any questions you guys might have.
Senator King?
Thank you. I've known Bobby for a lot of years, and I admire his work with the Racing Commission, and I know he's pretty passionate about being on that commission and does a great job, so I'd like to second that, that he move ahead with staying on that commission.
Thank you, Senator King. And we had a great meeting this afternoon, so very nice to have you here, and thank you for your work. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Thank you so much, everybody, and I look forward to your support.
Is Senator Muse here? I'm not sure that. No. Okay, so next we're going to hear from Mr. Michael Howard. And just quickly looking at Mr. Howard's resume, he's a certified public accountant with founder and managing member of the MJH Group of Washington, D.C. since 1998. And it's a private investment and management consulting firm founded in 98, and it's participated in several high-profile consulting engagements, and you sound like a perfect addition to the Retirement and Pension Systems Board of Trustees. So thank you, Mr. Howard, for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Greatly appreciate it. Good evening to everyone, as well as, thank Vice Chair Hayes, President Ferguson, and other distinguished members of this committee. I'd just like to pause for a second and acknowledge my mother's passing in October of 2022, but she's always encouraged us to, be of service to our community, and I just want to continue to do this in her loving memory. Again, I would like to thank the Hogan Rutherford administration for putting my name forward for this tremendous opportunity to serve on the Board of Trustees for the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System. In addition, I would like to thank the Moore Miller administration for their support for my continued appointment to the State Pension Board. And again, I'm deeply honored to serve in this role, and I look forward to working with my fellow trustees as well as with the executive leadership team of the pension fund to deliver on its mission to our members. Thank you so much for your support of my nomination. Thank you. Look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. I don't see any questions, but thank you for your service. Have a good evening. Okay, we have Senator Motz with Rondell Allen, Technology Development Corporation Board of Directors.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. It's a great honor for me to be able to introduce Dr. Rondell Allen, who's been nominated to serve on TEDCO. Dr. Allen, his resume is very thick, as you will see. It's important to note that he is our provost and vice president for one of the finest institutions in Maryland, an HBCU on the Eastern Shore, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. I've had many personal dealings with Dr. Allen. They have all been tremendous. He is a wonderful selection, and something to add to his resume, which is not included in the paper before you. The University of Maryland Eastern Shore has just constructed an incredible pharmacy building. It is state of the art. It is amazing. Dr. Allen has been at the lead in developing that building and developing the curriculum around that building. And he is so well placed for this position to make a difference, both for TEDCO, but on the shore. So it's my honor to introduce Dr. Allen. Thank you, Dr. Allen.
All right. Well, good evening. I want to thank Senator Motz for that gracious introduction. Madam Chair, Vice Chair, President, and the committee, I do want to start by just thanking the Moore Miller administration for the reappointment to the TEDCO board. And I'm really looking forward to continue to serve in this capacity and to serve the citizens of Maryland. So I will pause here and see if you have any questions.
Do I have any questions? Oh, we do. Senator Croza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to echo the recommendation here. And Dr. Allen is being very humble. When you see him in action at University of Maryland Eastern Shore, it's just amazing to watch him inspire the students.
and that's what I watched. We're very proud of moving forward with the pharmacy and healthcare profession school, but the conversations we've had about keeping our talent on the shore and driving it from UMES is amazing, but it's really watching those students. You inspire them, and I want to thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Senator Carrozza.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much for being here. Sorry that you had to wait so long, but have a great evening.
I sure will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have is Senator Klassmeyer here? Okay, so Omar Mohammed, another TEDCO. And if I can just take a minute, I really enjoyed reading your resume and your background. What? Oh, okay. It was changed. Would you like to do the introduction? Okay, I'd be happy to have you do it. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Mohammed used to be a resident of District 44 before he moved to Senator Klausmeyer's district, but he's been an outstanding supporter of entrepreneurship. He's a professor over at am I giving you a big grade? Over at Morgan State. He works over at Morgan State University. He's been on TEDCO's board and is doing an outstanding job, and I think he will continue doing an outstanding job.
Thank you, Senator. So you were his senator, but
yes,
he was district out, or you were, I guess.
You relocated.
Oh, you moved, okay. Well, thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. Great evening, everybody. Thank you, Senator Senor, for that introduction. Again, good evening. I know you all are trying to get out here, so I'm gonna make this real fast. Madam Chair, Senator Hayes, Senator Ferguson. Everybody's saying Senator Ferguson, and I gotta recognize Senator McCray, Corey McCray as well. I really appreciate the governor for allowing me to be on this organization again. One of the things I believe in is entrepreneurship, and I'm part of the ecosystem, and I'm glad to make sure that we're making accessible access to capital accessible to each and every individual, not just I'll just say across the state of Maryland. So I'm really appreciative of being on this committee and look forward to working for the individuals in the state of Maryland. And I'll take any questions that you all may have.
Do we have any questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And last, but certainly not least, Mr. David Tone, if I said that right? Yes, ma'am. Is Mary Washington here? Is anybody going to introduce Mr. Tone? Because every time I've tried tonight, I've been interrupted. So thank you for being here with us tonight. Also, another TEDCO Board of Directors, and I guess this is a new appointment, not a reappointment, correct?
I was interim appointed under Senator Hogan, and this is the first appointment where I'm in front of the committee.
Like to share with us.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair Committee. Thank you all for your service. I'm honored to be here. I apologize for the lack of tie. I left all my clip-ons, my last move. And I'm keenly aware that I'm the final nominee between all of us and a glass of wine, so I'll keep this to under 30 minutes. Thank you to Governor Moore for his nomination, trust, and confidence. In 2011, after 12 moves and 24 years of military service, we chose Maryland in general and Baltimore in particular as our forever home. Since then, I've sought ways to plug into the community and continue to serve in ways that are meaningful, as is TEDCO's mission. I hope to bring the perspectives of business owner, entrepreneur with a successful exit, active member of Maryland's innovation and defense industrial base ecosystem, and as the vice chair of the Maryland Technology Council to the amazing opportunities in front of TEDCO in Maryland. I'm excited about TEDCO's role in helping to grow our economy, create opportunity, further innovation, and expand participation in the entrepreneurial ecosystem for all Marylanders. I truly appreciate the committee's support. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our final witness of the night? Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Thank you,
appreciate it. Are there any questions, any discussions from the committee before we make the motion? Mr. Vice Chair, will you please make your motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we move favorable on numbers 1 through 27, with the exception of number 13. What's that? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Let me start all over. I withdraw that motion. So, Madam Chair, I move that we move favorable on numbers 1 through 27, as well as all of our statewide nominees, with the exception of number 13.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all for your patience tonight.